Alrighty. Before we get started, I would like to mention that closed captioning is available for this event. Option to enable it should be in on the bar at the bottom of your screen. It'll say closed captions. Should click the little arrow, and you should be able to show subtitles. Welcome to a night of spiritual poetry and conversation with Andrea Gibson. Before we get started, I'd like to take a moment and do a couple things. First, I'd like to thank each of the individual sponsors who made this event possible. The UT Dallas Student Union and Activities Advisory Board, SUAAB, a student programming board that offers a variety of engaging and innovative events that promote student participation and a sense of belonging within the UTD community to enhance student life. The UT Dallas Galerstein Gender Center, a campus resource that fosters an affirming and inclusive environment by advocating for LGBT+ and gender equity through diversity initiatives of education, advocacy, programs, and services. And Discipleship Ministries of the United Methodist Church, who help local church, district, and conference leaders fulfill the shared dream of making world-changing disciples. We are grateful for all three organizations' help and support. As for us, Synergy Wesley Foundation is a United Methodist campus ministry serving students from the University of Texas at Dallas, Collin College, Richland College, Brookhaven College, and other North Dallas community colleges. We are a diverse and inclusive community where all students are welcomed and celebrated for who they are, regardless of gender identity or orientation, race, ethnicity, national origin, age, physical or mental ability, marital status, economic condition, or religious affiliation. We host meetings via Zoom every Monday at noon and Wednesday at 7, discussing the intersections of theology and social justice. If you would like to learn more and get access to the Zoom meetings, please visit www.synergywesley.org/contact or find us on Instagram and Twitter via @synergywesley. Finally, a brief word about our guest tonight. Andrea Gibson, pronouns they, them, is one of the most stirring and influential spoken word artists of our time. Gibson's poems center around LGBTQ issues, gender, feminism, and mental health, as well as gun reform and the dismantling of oppressive social systems. Their live shows have become loving and supportive ecosystems for audiences to feel seen, heard, and held through Gibson's art. Gibson is the author of 6 books and was the winner of the Independent Publishers Award, a Goodreads Choice Awards finalist, won the first ever Women's World Poetry Slam Championship, and is a frequent World Poetry Slam finalist. And now I will turn things over to and invite everyone to sing along with our Wesley Band as they open with We Are Alive by Gungor.
Come to the water if you're thirsty. Drink of the river, cold and deep. Whatever may come, all are welcome. Every saint and sinner free. Come to the fire if you're lonely. Warm up your hands and grab a drum. Everyone singing, some are dancing. You can sit here and join along. Oh, 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 oh,
And with that wonderful intro, I am honored to turn things over to our featured guest, the amazing Andrea Gibson.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I love seeing everybody's face on the screen because we look like the Brady Bunch right now. And I love the idea that we're just all in the same family. Oh, and we're getting comments already. Hi. So I'm very excited for this show. And to give you some context for my life, I grew up in the Baptist church and I went to a Catholic university because I was a basketball player and I got recruited to go play basketball. And so a lot of my work is shaped shall I say by Jesus. He's all throughout my poems, as you're going to hear. And I specifically picked some poems today that I felt, you know, would speak to exactly what you're doing in regards to the intersection of spirituality and political activism. I'm going to start with a poem that is about the first time I fell in love with a woman. And I was at my Catholic college at the time. I'm going to read out of my book, even though at my shows, I typically have poems memorized, but I've not been on tour for a year, so they're not as fresh in my brain. So here we go. This is called First Love. I don't think I ever really kissed any boys. I think my tongue had just been punching their tongues. But as soon as you loved me, all my callus went away. My hands so soft it hurt to pray. You picked me up at my Catholic college and I'd sleep for hours till we reached your house. The first time in my life I'd ever rested. The first time I didn't have to play a role I'd never wanted to get. That's the medicine it is to be finally seen by someone. I'd crack a smile and you'd point to my chest and say, what just broke? I'd throw my body in the river, but you'd say my name right and I'd become a stone that skipped. Do you remember the first record where we didn't have to change the pronouns to sing along? We'd gone so many years without music that knew us. Music that knew you could arch your back and I'd have proof that the earth was round. Bless who we were then. Bless who we still are. My straight friends tease me because all my best friends are my ex-loves, but a wise heart told me it is the most tender part of queerness, how we've all lost so much family. When we find people we call family, we'll do almost anything to not let go. Thank goodness for that ice storm that trapped us in that cheap hotel, where I drank an entire bottle of something awful and finally told you I'd loved you since we were 15, playing basketball under a flickering streetlight beside the poorest part of the sea. The ice storm froze the world outside into a photograph of the past, while I kneeled down and kissed my future onto your kneecaps, 2 decades talking to Jesus. That was the first time I heard him talk back. Months later, church bells ringing through my dorm room. I wrote my senior thesis about you and told no one how hard I was praying to stop hiding myself in metaphor, to one day be brave enough to carve the truth into the chapel door. Holy were all the hours I spent picking out my outfit the night you took me to my first queer bar in Portland, Maine, the biggest city I had ever walked through. I was so excited and so scared that we'd be spotted or killed on our way inside. We sat in the parking lot for over an hour till I changed my mind and you drove me home, mascara pouring down my brand new boy shirt. I couldn't have guessed there'd come a time like the winter we traveled north to visit your mother. Asleep when we arrived after midnight, she lit our room with candles and we pulled her welcome into our lungs like it was 100 years of oxygen. Up until then, we didn't know anyone in the whole world would celebrate us, wiping the steam from the glass to see each other blushing in the same bathroom mirror in the morning. I was thinking about that a few months ago when I was invited back to my Catholic college to read poems for the first time. You in the front row, near the nuns and the school president and the teacher who had given me an A on the manuscript I'd been too terrified to write your name in. Mandy, I know so much has not gotten easier. I know so much has not gotten better, but that moment, it knocked the wind out of me. Time, finally being the kind of father we all deserve. The world turning its porch light on for us. It was so bright. I could feel the freckles on my 15-year-old face warming in its glow. I could feel hope traveling back in time to find us, to whisper into our chests, there will be music for you one day. So I'm gonna be extra queer today. Not that that's a different day than usual for me, but extra queer. Even when I try not to be queer, I end up being queer. I got this call, years ago. I woke up and I had a bunch of calls and a bunch of texts and emails from people saying, congratulations on Utah. And I didn't know what had happened in Utah. And I looked at the news, and what happened was this House representative had gotten up in front of the Utah State legislature, and in lieu of morning prayer, read one of my poems. And the headline in the news was, gay representative reads gay poem in lieu of the morning prayer in Utah. And what was so funny about it was there wasn't a single gay thing in the poem, but because I wrote it, it was gay. And I loved knowing that everything I've ever written in my entire life is gay. just because I am. So this next poem I'm going to share with you is the first poem that I wrote years ago, really directly addressing suicidality. And I guess this isn't necessarily a queer poem, but in parts it is. When I think about suicidality within the queer community, I think about it no differently than I think about murder, and I think about a culture that hasn't learned its own heart yet, killing people with its hate and or just its simple lack of welcome in places. And there's so much we need to do better to protect each other's lives and protect the lives of our youth. So the nutritionist said I should eat root vegetables. Said if I could get down 13 turnips a day, I would be grounded, rooted. Said my head would not keep flying away to where the darkness lives. The psychic told me my heart carries too much weight. Said for $20, she'd tell me what to do. I handed her the 20. She said, stop worrying, darling. You will find a good man soon. The first psychotherapist said I should spend 3 hours a day sitting in a dark closet with my eyes closed and my ears plugged. I tried it once, but couldn't stop thinking about how gay it was to be sitting in the closet. The yogi told me to stretch everything but the truth. Said to focus on the out-breath. Said everyone finds happiness if they can care more about what they give than what they get. The pharmacist said Klonopin, Lamictal, lithium, Xanax. The doctor said an antipsychotic might help me forget what the trauma said. The trauma said, don't write this poem. Nobody wants to hear you cry about the grief inside your bones. But my bones said. Tyler Clemente dove into the Hudson River, convinced he was entirely alone. My bones said, write the poem. To the lamplight, considering the riverbed, to the chandelier of your faith hanging by a thread, to every day you cannot get out of bed, to the bullseye of your wrist, to anyone who has ever wanted to die. I have been told sometimes the most healing thing we can do is remind ourselves over and over and over, other people feel this too. The tomorrow that has come and gone, and it has not gotten better. When you are half finished writing that letter to your mother that says, I swear to God, I tried, but when I thought I'd hit bottom, it started hitting back. There is no bruise, like the bruised loneliness kicks into the spine. So let me tell you, I know there are days when it looks like the whole world is dancing in the streets, where you break down like the doors of their looted buildings. You are not alone. And wondering who will be convicted of the crime of insisting you keep loading your grief into the chamber of your shame. You are not weak just because your heart feels so heavy. I have never met a heavy heart that wasn't a phone booth with a red cape inside. Some people will never understand the kind of superpower it takes for some people to just walk outside some days. I know my smile looks like a gutter on a falling house, but my hands are still holding tight to the ripcord of believing a life can be rich like the soil, can make food decay, turn wound into highway, pick me up in a truck with that bumper sticker that says it is no measure of good health to be well adjusted to a sick society. I have never trusted anyone with a pulled back bow of my spine, the way I trust the ones who come undone at the throat, screaming for their pulse to find the fight to pound. 4 nights before Tyler Clemente jumped from the George Washington Bridge, I was sitting in a hotel room in my own town, calculating exactly what I had to swallow to keep a bottle of sleeping pills down. What I know about living is the pain is never just ours. Every time I hurt, I know the wound is an echo. So I keep listening for the moment when the grief becomes a window, when I can see what I couldn't see before through the glass of my most battered dream. I watched a dandelion lose its mind in the wind, and when it did, it scattered 1,000 seeds. So the next time I tell you how easily I come out of my skin, don't try to put me back in. Just say, here we are, together at the window, aching for it to all get better, but knowing there is a chance our hearts may have only just skinned their knees, knowing there is a chance the worst day might still be coming. Let me say right now for the record, I'm still gonna be here, asking this world to dance, even if it keeps stepping on my holy feet. You stay here with me, okay? You stay here with me. Raising your bite against the bitter dark, your bright longing, your brilliant fist of loss. Friend, if the only thing we have to gain in staying is each other, my God, that is plenty. My God, that is enough. My God, that is so, so much for the light to give. Each of us at each other's backs, whispering over and over and over, live, live, live. Okay. I was reading that and I realized that I'm very emotional today, which is not new for me either. Queer and emotional pretty much happen every single day of my life. This next poem is a poem I wrote about being non-binary, which I've been writing on the topic for years. And it's fascinating because gender is one thing where I don't necessarily know anything about my own experience of my own gender until I start writing. And then I figure it out through the process of writing. Like when I was writing this poem, I kept discovering things about myself that I wouldn't have known had I not written it. And this is called Your Life. It's a genderful pet talk to my younger self. It isn't that you don't like boys. It's that you only like boys you want to be. David with his jaw carved out of the side of a cliff. Malcolm who doesn't have secrets, just stories he owes no one. Chris, the basketball hero who has the tick. He blinks 15 times when he makes a shot. You spend hours blinking in the mirror, wishing you could be a star like him. Mary Levine calls you a dyke and you don't have the language to tell her she's wrong and right. So you just show up to her house, promising to paint her fingernails red with what will gush from her busted face if she ever says it again. You're in the 7th grade. You don't even know you want a girlfriend. You still believe too much in the people who believe in Jesus, can't even feel the desire to its hell threat. You just want to kick your desk on the way to the principal's office, slouch in detention, want to cut your hair and spit out whatever you don't want in your mouth, your own name even skirting around the truth. You don't yet know the boys are building their confidence on stolen land, but you do worry the girls might be occupied with things you will never understand, won't ever be good at. You take one pretty step and feel like you're pouring bubbles into your own blood bath. You don't want a soft death. You want a hard life that is your life in the locker room that doesn't stop demanding you keep your eyes on the floor. Your life at the prom, where you run home in a snowstorm, chucking your last pair of heels in a snowbank, realizing you are the only boy you ever wanted to tear your dress off for. Your life, the first Christmas you spend alone, the years you'll learn to build your family from scratch. Your life, the first time someone drags you from a restroom by the color of your coat. Your life, every time airport security screams pink or blue, trying to figure out what machine setting to run you through. Choosing your life and how that made you into someone who now often finds it easy to explain your gender by saying you are happiest on the road when you're not here or there, but in between, the yellow line coming down the center of it all like a goddamn sunbeam. Your name is not a song you will sing under your breath. I promise your pronouns haven't even been invented yet. You're going to shave your head and drive through Texas. You're going to kill your own God so you can fall in love for the first time. They're going to keep telling you your heartbeat is a pre-existing condition. They're going to keep telling you you are a crime of nature. And you're going to look at all your options and choose conviction. Choose to carve your own heart out of the side of a cliff. Choose to spend your whole life telling secrets you owe no one, to everyone, so there isn't anyone who can insult you by calling you what you are, you holy blinking star, you highway streak of light, falling over and over for your hard life, your perfect life, your sweet and beautiful life. It's nice to be this queer. So I have no idea how many poems make up a 30-minute set, but let's just keep reading and you all tell me when I'm talking too much.
Keep going, you're good.
Okay. It's a poem about gun reform, and I started writing it when, most of my friends are teachers, and they were having to do all these sort of active shooter, sort of drills with little tiny children. Even to be a teenager going through that, or even to be somebody my age going through that, is can in itself be traumatic. And so much about this country needs changing. I wrote this poem when Trump was still president. Thank goodness that's not happening anymore. This is called America Reloading. Mostly because of dying stars. Scientists say space smells like barbecue and gunpowder, which is to say space smells like the United States. A holiday where we celebrate the independence of machine guns. How anyone can buy a cemetery at a sporting goods store on their 18th birthday and open carry it to an elementary school where children are learning tears don't fall in space. Weightless, without gravity, they never leave the eye. Is that what happens to the NRA, a child asks, after the bodies of half her class have used every red crayon in the universe to scream goodbye? Did the NRA's tears not drop because they're astronauts? How does a parent tell a 6-year-old the gun sales spike every time our right to bear massacres makes a coroner faint, makes a mortician say, I can't, my God, I can't, but we can, can't we, America? Each election, don't we say we can stomach the boy, loading a black hole into his backpack and unloading it in the high school hallway on Valentine's Day? It would take light years to count how many times the terrified texted, I love you, I love you, I love you in Parkland, Florida, while the NRA kept crying in space. My friend, a second grade teacher, is instructed to practice hiding her children in the closet. 23 7-year-olds huddle holding their breath. Holding your breath in space is the fastest way to die. The lungs explode in that vacuum almost as quickly as an AR-15 can make blood dust of a closet door. Of the 20 children murdered at Sandy Hook, not one of them needed an ambulance. That's how dead they were. That's how well the Second Amendment works. Because there is no air, it is silent in space. But not as silent as the Christians on the Senate floor, while 20 more families are asked if they would like to talk to a priest. Christ could tear the nails from his hands and scrape them down a shrapnel-battered chalkboard, and they would still be praying for their bank accounts. After Columbine, parents were notified about their children in tiny conference rooms. One family said, we could hear the family before us screaming, and we knew we were next. Now loved ones check Facebook to see who is dead. A mother's status is, I can't reach my daughter. I can't reach my daughter. Decades after her child is slaughtered in the cafeteria, that thought will still be tearing her from her bed. I can't reach my daughter. The footprints left by astronauts on the moon are permanent. They will never go away. Like the grief of a father identifying his son by his shoes because the rest of his son's body was out-lobbied by the NRA, by suits whispering into the ears of Washington, this is what it means by freedom. This is what we mean by freedom and justice. The names of our cities becoming synonymous with babies being buried like seeds in the greed gardens of the wealthy. But you should know your teacher was a hero, we say. Her body was found bunkering a group of your friends. And that's as happy as the ending gets right now. The hero is almost always dead. The flag at half-mast grave. Children huddled in basements trying to tear off their ears on the 4th of July because the fireworks sound like the day everyone died crying, died with gravity pouring their next 80 birthdays from their eyes. Well, America reloaded and moved on to the next. That's always a very hard poem to read. Would you say probably I have time for about 2 more poems or more than that?
We have about 10 minutes.
10 minutes, okay. So we'll see where we are at after these. Probably it will take up 10 minutes. So I'm gonna go back, and this book is called Pole Dancing to Gospel Hymns. And it's my first book that I ever did. And I'm going to read you a poem that's one of the first spoken word poems that I ever wrote so many years ago. I mean, I wrote this so many years ago. I wrote it after Bush was elected for a second term. A lot of you probably were not yet born. And everybody I knew wanted to move to Canada. Do I dare tell you this emotional story? Wait, who cares if I cry? A few days ago, last week, I had a friend pass away, and she's one of the most spiritual people I've ever met. And she's also her whole life was activism, and she was diagnosed 10 months ago with terminal cancer, and she was very young. She had just turned 40, and in the last months of her life, she was going around town because she was so mad that she couldn't go to protests because of the mix of cancer and COVID. She couldn't get COVID, she couldn't risk going. And so because she couldn't go to the protests where lots of people were at, she was sneaking out of her house in the middle of the night and painting the names of women who had been murdered by police all over the city. And so now I live in a town with where the names of people are painted everywhere by her, and she's gone, but she's just wonderful. Anyway, this poem is called Say Yes. First time I ever read it to anyone was her and her friend so many years ago. So I'm going to share it. If you go and look up this poem online, you'll see that I'm sort of changing some words on the spot because as time has passed and I've learned more, I can read some things in this poem now that I find transphobic or classist. So I'm going to try to edit that out as I go. When 2 violins are placed in a room, if a chord on one violin is struck, the other violin will sound that note. If this is your definition of hope, this is for you, for the ones who know how powerful we are, who know we can sound the music and the people around us simply by playing our own strings, for the ones who sing life into broken wings, open their chests and offer their breath as wind on a still day. When nothing seems to be moving, spare those intent on proving God is dead. For you, when your fingers are red from clutching your heart so it will beat faster, for the time you master the art of giving yourself for the sake of someone else, for the ones who have felt what it is to crush the lies and lift truth so high the steeples bow to the sky. And this is for you. This is also for the people who wake early to watch flowers bloom, who notice the moon at noon on a day when the world has slapped them in its face with its lack of light. For the mothers who feed their children first and thirst for nothing when they're full. This is for women. And for the men who taught me women bleed with the moon, but there are men who cry when women bleed, men who bleed from women's wounds, and this is for that moon. On the night she seems hung by a noose, for the people who cut her loose, and for the people still waiting for the rope to burn, about to learn they have scissors in their hands. This is for the man who showed me the hardest thing about having nothing is having nothing to give. who said the only reason to live is to give ourselves away. So this is for the day we'll work for something real. We'll feel for sunshine in the shadows, look for sun rays in the shade. This is for the people who rattled the cage that slave wage built, and for the ones who didn't know the filth until tonight. But right now we're beginning songs that sound something like people turning their porch lights on and calling the homeless back home. And this is for everything we own, and for the day we'll learn how much we have when we learn to give that all away. This is for doubt becoming faith, for falling from grace and climbing back up, for trading our silver platter for something that matters, like the gold that shines from our hands when we hold each other. This is for your grandmother, who walked 1,000 miles on broken glass to find that single patch of grass to plant a family tree where the fruit would grow to laugh. For the ones who know the math of war has always been subtraction, so they live like an action of addition. For you, when you give, like every star is wishing on you, and for the people still wishing on stars, this is for you too. This is for the times you went through hell so someone else wouldn't have to. For the time you taught a 14-year-old girl she was powerful. For the time you taught a 14-year-old boy he was beautiful. For the radical anarchist asking a Republican to dance, because what's the chance of anyone moving from right to left if the only moves they see are Fox News? This is for no becoming yes, for fear becoming trust, for saying I love you to people who will never say it to us, for scraping away the rust and remembering how to shine, for the dime you gave away when you didn't have a penny, for the many beautiful things we do, for every song we've ever sung, for refusing to believe in miracles because miracles are the impossible coming true and everything is possible. This is for the possibility that guides us, and for the possibility still waiting to sing and spread their wings inside us, because tonight Saturn is on his knees, proposing with all of his 10,000 rings of whatever song we've been singing, we sing even more. The world needs us right now more than it ever has before. Pull all your strings, play every chord. If you're writing letters to the prisoners, start tearing down the bars. If you're handing out flashlights in the dark, start handing out stars. Never go a second, hushing the percussion of your heart. Play loud, play like you know the clouds have left too many people cold and broken, and you are their last chance for sun. Play that there's no time for hoping brighter days will come. Play like the apocalypse is only 4, 3, 2, but you have a drum in your chest that could save us. You have a song like a breath that could raise us like the sunrise into a dark sky that cries to be blue. Play like you know we won't survive if you don't, but we will if you do. Play like Saturn is on his knees, proposing with all of his 10,000 rings. We give every single breath. This is for saying yes. I'm going to go back and edit in retrospect. The line where I say, this is for women and for the men who taught me women bleed with the moon. So, you know, I'm sure most of you know that not only women bleed with the moon, not all women bleed with the moon. Some men bleed. So anyway, give that no. And I'm going to read you one more poem. Still emotional, y'all. I doubt you brought me here to not be emotional, so I'm just gonna go. I'm just gonna go with it. What book is this in? Oh, right here. Okay, this will be my last poem, and then I'll answer some questions. And if anybody has answers, bring those as well. We need them. I think I read this poem at Mumbletech, and it's another old one, but I really wanted to read it as, you know, I always hated the idea that the queers weren't going to heaven. I don't believe that one bit. Okay, this poem it's not typically a poem that I would end on because it's quite heavy. But that last one was hopeful and I cried through that anyway. So let's just do this. I wrote this poem years ago after I heard a story about a soldier who had been set on fire and burned to death because he was gay. And then I started reading similar stories about people in the queer community who had died that way. And I kept thinking about what they might say from where they are now. and wrote this piece. The night I was torn from the pages of their Bible and burned alive. My ashes came down like snow, and a girl who had never seen my face saw me falling from the sky, and lay down on her back to make an angel in the powder of my bones. From heaven I watched her, though my eyes were still flame, and my ribs were still blue. They didn't win, I whispered, as her arms built my wings. They didn't win. Look at that moon. It is a pebble in my hand. Tonight, I could skip it across that fog-drunk sea to their lashes accordion in the light, and all they know of hate is that it couldn't beat the love out of me. That when they dropped me to the grave, I fell like a bucket into a well and came up full, carving my lover's name into the skin of a weeping willow that had spent its entire life laughing at the rain. Hold me like a lantern, staircase my spine. When they bring their children to my funeral to scream faggot at my dust, tell them I was born into this casket, but I wouldn't pull the splinters from my heart any more than Christ would pull the thorns from his crimson head. They can come 1,000 times with their burning matches and their gasoline, with their hungry laws and their empty mouths full of prayers to that God who greeted me at his gates with his throat full of trumpets and his tears full of shame, as his trembling palms collected the cinders of his children's crime. I know what holy is. I know the soul is shaped like a bowl. I know the lies we try to fill it with, and we fill it too often with the orchards inside. But my lover's shoes were laced with guitar strings. And when I walked beside, there was a silo in my chest. There was a field full of sun. There was a river full of gold that we left to pick our sweet hearts from the trees that kept uprooting tombstones so the names of the dead would crumble into poems. Write me down like this. Say my ashes never made the news. Say the jury was full of shotguns. Then say the snow that is falling on the tip of your tongue will refuse to melt away. Say this to the kids hiding their heartbeats from their father's fists. I planted the garden of my kiss. I opened the night with my teeth. I loved so hard that when they press their ear to the track, the train they hear coming will still be my chest. A rumbling harpoon, a sky they cannot bury. Look at that moon. I'm a pebble in her hand, a harmonica held to the mouth of the river where nothing ever burns. Okay. That made me have feelings. Thanks for listening to my feelings. And maybe you can also hear my dog barking in the background, or one of the 3 dogs that's trying to be quiet with my partner in the room beside me. So yeah, thanks for listening, everyone.
Thank you, Andrea. So powerful. Thank you for creating this holy, sacred space for us to connect with each other, ourselves, God. We're going to move into a time of Q&A, and we invited people as they RSVP'd to submit questions in advance. So if you just found out about this program today and you didn't get to submit a question, you're welcome to share it in the chat, and we can't promise that we'll get to it, but we will try. So our first question comes from UTD student Pooja. It's going to be shared by UTD student Chris.
Hi, Andrea.
Hi, Chris.
So our first question tonight is, what advice do you have for someone who is struggling to come to terms with their sexuality or gender?
So I'm trying to think back to when that was my experience, struggling to come to terms. And I wonder if sometimes it's always a kind of a lifelong process, as the way our sexualities and gender. I used to think that there was like a landing point, you know, and realize after a number of years that my sexuality would continue to change or evolve, and my gender would as well. It would never be this same from year to year. So when I think about that, I think about welcoming the becoming. Know there's no rush. Be gentle, gentle with yourself. And I think one of the most helpful things that would have been so helpful for me, which I actually didn't know until like 5 years ago, was that me not being me didn't ever benefit anyone. I used to think that I could protect the homophobic people in my life. For example, my parents, when I came out, had a really hard time with it. I thought I could protect them or make their lives better by not being queer. And it took me a lot of years to learn that the more me I was, the better the whole world was, even people who didn't think they'd be better with me being queer, because it gave my parents an opportunity to grow and evolve. And I also think being in line with yourself is being in line with God. And so walk that path and do it at a pace that is honoring and supportive of your beautiful, tender self.
Yeah,
I answered that one pretty good, I think.
Amen. Preach. The next question comes from UTD student Twinkle, and it's going to be shared by UTD student Zach.
Hey, Andrea. What advice do you have? What advice do you wish you received in your early 20s?
Well, first of all, I wish in my early 20s my name was Twinkle. Lucky person. You know, the hardest thing I was going through in my early 20s was coming out to my family. It was so much grief for me. I remember for years I could hardly sleep because I would just stay awake all night worrying about them, worrying they weren't okay, and also just missing them. And I wish I knew to not think that the possibility for their change was completely ruled out, because they did change, and they did grow and learn, to unlearn things that they had been taught in the past. And I think that would have given me hope to know that. But also, at least I could have held some patience with my grief. So one thing is, if you think there are people in your life that are never going to change, know that they may. And I, of course, also understanding not putting, all your cards there. I think the most important place to put your, all your cards, not that I know anything about poker, what even I'm talking about, but is to surround yourself with people who celebrate you and adore you and honor you for exactly who you are right now. And also people who aren't going to hold you to who you are now, who will be able to see and evolving you as you evolve. And part of loving you means loving your becoming, loving who you're going to be. Yeah.
Question from
Twinkle
Matt.
is such an awesome name. I've never even considered that. I want to meet Twinkle someday, please.
Question from Matt. You are the best. Okay, that wasn't a question, but it is true. Matt Johns of the Gender Center. Our next question comes from UTD student Lizzie, and Grace will be asking this one.
Hey, so Lizzie's question is, how do you see the divinity in queerness?
What a great question. Because I think I feel that all the time, but I don't know if I've ever put words to it. I think the first thing that comes up is remembering what it was like to fall in love with a woman for the first time. And you heard a poem a bit about it, but I don't know that I spoke to how much it really felt like discovering or rediscovering God. Like I really felt like I had tapped into, something so holy, and loving her was like loving, wasn't separate from loving God, to being totally tapped into the universe and this energy that connects us. So it really, I think of it, I connect it there. And the other thing was queerness was the first thing that made me question everything about the world, because I had truly believed that my own queerness was a sin, was awful. And then once I figured out that wasn't true, nothing else felt like it was certain anymore. And so I had to go investigate what truth was for me. And I think had I not been queer, I may never have done that. I think that forced me to question everything. And I think questions are holy things. So that's my answer there.
Our next question comes from PhD student Anna, who's working on their dissertation on queer enfleshment and the sacred that draws on Andrea's work. Anna's question will be asked by UTD student Maddie.
Hello. Her question is, who and what do you turn to for sacred wisdom and spiritual grounding?
My main guy, who I call my boyfriend all the time, is Eckhart Tolle. He's sort of this presence. He's not Buddhist, but he has a lot of Buddhist practices. He teaches a lot about just being where we are in the moment. Teaches a lot about just open-hearted love and kindness. I also love this Buddhist teacher named Pema Chodron. She makes her way into a number of my poems. And there's also an activist who is a Christian. Geez, I don't know if she'd call herself a Christian activist. I just know she's an activist and she's Christian. Her name is Sonia Renee Taylor. And her activism intermingles with her Christianity in this powerful way. She's been one of the leading voices that has helped me dismantle the white supremacy in my own mind. And she does a lot of race work, and I really recommend checking out everything she's doing. She wrote a book called The Body Is Not an Apology. That's just phenomenal. So those are the first people that pop up in my mind.
Our next question comes from UTD student Chris.
Me again. Okay. Do you have any practices that you think of as spiritual practices?
Oh my, so many. I mean, I think of poetry as like a spiritual practice. All art feels very spiritual to me. Writing, definitely if I'm writing in a specific space, like I'm writing a book right now where I'm not letting myself say anything bitter or blaming, which is a challenge, which is a challenge for me. But I kind of have to really really presence myself to do it and tap into, something greater, more loving and wiser than myself. But I've never known if I call it praying or meditating, but I'm talking to God, and there are different words. I don't quite even know what I mean when I say God, but a loving energy of the universe so many times in a day, where I'm just like, before I get on this call, this meeting with you, I'll do it. And it might take me 5 minutes where I just ask the universe, or pray, sit with an energy of sort of welcoming in a connection between all of us, and supporting myself and all of you who are here, and having like a loving experience that will be better, we'll all be better for. But I do it constantly. If I'm having a panic attack, if I'm I don't know, if I want to make a good decision about something, it's probably something I do for 4 or 5 times a day, sometimes 20 times a day. So I'm, constantly in conversation with something bigger than myself that doesn't actually have a name for me. God feels like the easiest way to say it, but don't know what that means. Yeah. Gino, really? All right, okay, I just saw a comment, sorry.
Our next question is going to be asked by UTD student Zach.
Hi, me again. Do you have a sense of spiritual or religious community?
Will you say that one more time?
Do you have a sense of religious or spiritual community?
Yes, very much so. I would say the majority of my community feels like a spiritual community. And even I have a few friends that identify as atheists, strongly as atheists, and they are just, I don't know how to say it, like so holy. You know, I don't know how to say God is awful through your life. But they're, you know, they're activists and they're artists and they're just such loving people. But yeah, everywhere, like, and a mix of people, you know, Buddhist people, Christian people. One of my mentors is an Orthodox Jewish woman, and I've learned so much through her. And yeah, so I feel like it's everywhere in my life.
All right, this is another one from PhD student Anna, and Grace will be asking this one.
So, what beliefs have you had to let go of, or what beliefs have you adopted for the sake of transformation and healing?
So many. I would say the biggest one that I've adopted is just deciding for myself. And this is, I've learned this is nothing to ever put on anybody else, because you don't want to ever ask somebody else to look at a tragedy in their lives as also a gift. I think that's quite offensive to do. But for myself, that has been one of the biggest shifts in my life. My therapist often says the only thing we have control over in our lives is where we put our attention. So if something tragic happens in my life, I try to turn my attention towards the lesson in it, how I can open my heart more because of this thing having happened. And without that, I think that I would be caught in sort of a well of bitterness that never left me. One of my favorite poets ever, a poet named Mary Oliver, has a line in a poem that says, someone I love once gave me a box full of darkness. It took me years to understand that this too was a gift. And that line has carried me for so long, looking for the gift in something. And it often has been the thing that has helped me survive things that I did not know I could survive. So again, I don't think it's ever something to tell somebody else to do, because I think folks need to come to that on their own if they're going to, and it might not be the best route for everybody because, you know, so much is happening in this world that to make peace with might not always be the best thing. And making peace with something doesn't mean accept it. Doesn't mean to not activate to change the whole world for the better. Just looking for the lesson in things has helped me show up more as opposed to less.
Our last question comes from Matt Johns. It's a real question this time, and it'll be asked by UTD student Sahithi.
What is a myth about being non-binary that you wish people knew wasn't true?
Well, first, it's a myth that it's not grammatically correct. That's actually just a myth. If you trace back in history, but that's just crap. Like, who even cares if it was? Second, if it was grammatically incorrect, so what? Why do you care about the grammar old white men created more than you care about folks' lives? So that's one thing. Something else, I guess, is even though I've written it down as maybe a neither in some poems I've written, it's never been a neither. It's not about, for me, and some people it could be, because I think everybody, non-binary identity is different for every single person. But for me, it's not about not being a man or not being a woman. It's about being me. And they, them, theirs it feels like the pronoun that fits me best right now. But all pronouns, I think, sort of show up short because they're all lumping us into categories, which can be great for a lot of people. A lot of people really, a lot of people hate pronouns, and a lot of people really feel honored and seen by them and whatever. I don't mean whatever there. I'm just trying to figure out what I think about myself. Let's see. Do I feel honored and seen by my pronouns? more so than I did the one I was using previously. And so, yeah. So I guess it's just like, it's not an either thing for me. It's just, this is me, and it's ever changing. So who knows who I'm going to be next year, which is so fun. It's so fun. I just wrote a poem about gender that is, I feel like it in almost so many ways like opposes a lot of what I've said in the past, and I love that. It's just constantly it's just constantly changing. If I keep living, you know, more years, I'm so excited. So I wish I could read poems I was going to write 5 years from now and see who I'm going to be. Or no, I don't. I just want to live till that time. Anyway, that was a lot of mumbling about that. Pronouns, and it's so hard for me to talk about because it's just this whole gigantic world. And it also is like a world where I'm constantly thinking, does this world even exist? It's, yeah, but I feel grateful. I never imagined when I was a kid, because this was my gender when I was little. I never imagined there would be a pronoun in the same world while I was alive that I felt the culture was actually beginning to honor and respect. So that's great.
Thank you so much, Andrea. This has been so powerful and holy and sacred, and we are so blessed to have this time with you. So
y'all are awesome. I wish that I could be there in person, and so appreciate the questions. Those were amazing questions, and I just miss doing this live so much. Thank you for this gift of the time with you tonight. And I hope y'all are able to stay as safe as you can, and I hope you're just surrounded by love.
Thank you. We're gonna turn it over to Sahithi, and we've got one more song from the Wesley Band, so y'all stay tuned.
Thank you so much, Andrea. That was a wonderful show.
Thank you so much. Bye, everyone. Thank you. And thank you especially to Twinkle. Thank you. All right.
Thank you so much to our sponsors, the Gender Center, the Wesley Foundation, and SUAAB. And thank you to everyone who attended. This was amazing. And before you leave, make sure you check out Andrea's merch site. We'll have the link in the chat box below. And now to the Wesley Band. They're going to play A Beautiful Noise by Alicia Keys and Brandi Carlile.
I have a voice, started out as a whisper, turned into a scream, made a beautiful noise, shoulder to shoulder, marching in the street. When you're all alone, it's a quiet breeze, but when you band together, it's the choir of thunder and rain. Now we have a choice, 'cause it is loud, it is clear, it is stronger than your fear. It's believing you belong. It's for calling out the wrong. From the mouths of our mothers to the lips of our daughters, we can dream like our brothers, thinking now like our fathers. We can heal. Can you hear us? Can you hear us now?